perceived as funny, as evidenced by the audience and Will Smith laughing. And this is the moment where we got to see a live-action, real-time encapsulation of how cancel culture works. Look at what happens next. Jada shoots her husband a look. Let's slow the tape down to capture this moment. Before this moment, Will is laughing because he hasn't yet found out that his original, genuine reaction is wrong and that he should conform.
Bill Maher is rubbing salt deep into the wound after Will Smith's infamous Oscar slap. You already know the story, but what you might have missed is Maher's savage laugh-out-loud takedown of Smith's so-called tough guy act. He roasted Will relentlessly, exposing that little burst of manhood for the cheap theater it really was. Buckle up.
Break down jokes for the humor impaired. Not that I have anyone particular in mind. Now, I know we're all sick of talking about the slap, but I'm sorry, one more thing needs to be said. Comedians have been under attack for quite some time, and I need to stick up for my tribe. This war on jokes must end. So tonight, let's Zapruder film this thing once and for all and explain jokes to idiots.
So you heard the man, and he's right. Jokes have been under attack for quite some time. First, the woke crowd went after movies, policing what could be made and what should be banned. Now they've shifted their crosshairs to comedy, try to dictate which jokes are acceptable and which ones should be silenced. It's like they're determined to drain the fun out of everything. But Bill Maher isn't one to sit quietly while free expression gets strangled. Fed up with the woke mob's ever-expanding blacklist of forbidden laughs, Maher decided it was time to add his voice and his fire.
The Oscars, Chris Rock came out to present a boring award and first did what he is supposed to do, get some laughs doing what we comics call crowd work. Denzel and Javier Bardem each got spritzed. And then Chris made what in the business is known as a "some shit is like some other shit" joke. He said to Jada Smith, "Jada can't wait for G.I. Jane 2, recalling the late 90s movie starring Demi Moore. That's it. That's the joke. You remind me of some other beautiful, buzz-cutted movie star. It wasn't an alopecia joke any more than the one about the chicken crossing the road is about bird flu."
Now, this part is actually pretty interesting because I'll admit I never looked at it from that angle before. Sure, I knew about the G.I. Jane movie, but it didn't even cross my mind that Chris Rock's jab was tied directly to the shaved head look in the film and Jada's haircut that night. It's such a simple connection, yet so many of us overlooked it. But here's the bigger takeaway. Jokes are jokes. They're not supposed to be dissected like state policy. Sometimes they sting, sometimes they don't. But either way, we've got to toughen up and stomach them, even when they land on us. That's comedy, raw and unfiltered. Now, let's keep the clip rolling.
Insult, although insult humor is also a staple of comedy. And in fact, an example of insulting someone's looks was on display that night when Regina Hall said, "We've been dealing with COVID for 2 years. It's been really hard on people." And Amy Schumer said, "Yeah, just look at Timothée Chalamet," and they cut to J.K. Simmons. Who made a face a lot like the one Jada would make later on. But that's where it ended. It's called being a good sport, especially when you're a rich celebrity. Let the common people take the piss out of you for one stinking minute. And
one thing about these award shows is that they've turned into open hunting grounds where comedians and hosts take aim at rich, powerful celebrities. It's almost expected. Part of the entertainment is watching these stars who usually live in luxury and are praised endlessly get knocked down a peg or two with a sharp joke. Now, Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the whole ritual of roasting people in front of millions. I won't pretend otherwise, but at the end of the day, it's a free world and comedy has its place. If that means someone's ego or feelings take a hit, so be it. That's the risk of sitting in the front row.
And importantly, Chris's joke was received as funny, as evidenced by the audience and Will Smith laughing. And this is the moment where we got to see a live-action, real-time encapsulation of how cancel culture works. Look at what happens next. Jada shoots her husband a look. Let's slow the tape down to capture this moment. There. Back and to the left. Back and to the left. Back and to the left.
Smith actually laughed at Chris Rock's jab about his wife, at least at first. But the second Jada shot him that icy glare, his whole demeanor flipped, and we all know what happened next. That split-second shift tells you everything about the dynamic between Hollywood and the woke crowd. Deep down, a lot of celebrities don't truly buy into every woke cause they parade around. But just like Smith caving under pressure, they're coerced into compliance. The unspoken threat looms large. Step out of line, lose your reputation, maybe even your career. It's not conviction driving them. It's fear. Plain and simple.
For this moment, Will is laughing because he hasn't yet found out that his original genuine reaction is wrong and that he should conform to a different view. And he's the one who's being manly? I've seen the same syndrome happen in comedy clubs. Woke hecklers who literally have to wait for the laughter to die down before they yell, "That's not funny."
Well, Smith might have thought in that split-second decision that the manly thing to do was to stand up for his wife and show the world he wouldn't tolerate any insult directed at her. On the surface, that might sound noble, but when you look closer, it was anything but. What unfolded on that Oscar stage was less about courage and more about capitulation. Real masculinity isn't about throwing a slap on live television. It's about standing firm in your convictions, even when the pressure is on. Instead, Smith abandoned his own initial reaction, laughing at the joke and bent to the icy disapproval of his wife. That single glare rewrote his script, and in an instant he conformed. The result, what was framed as a bold act of love looked instead like weakness, exposing a man more concerned with appeasing Jada's expectations than with staying true to himself.
War on jokes must end. Will Smith didn't get kicked out of the Oscars for going Ike Turner on Chris, but Kevin Hart got kicked out of hosting it for a joke. Who are these people who say cancel culture isn't a real thing? Just among comedians who've gotten fired and lost gigs for exercising their freedom of expression, the toll is high. Gilbert Gottfried and Kathy Griffin were tasteless. So what? That's why we like them.
The joke might very well be tasteless, unfunny, and even offensive, but that doesn't mean it deserves cancellation. Comedy has always lived on the edge, pushing boundaries and making people uncomfortable. That's the nature of it. If a comedian's material doesn't sit right with you, the simple solution is not to buy their tickets, not to stream their specials, and not to attend their shows. Comedy is subjective, and just because something offends one group doesn't mean it should be silenced for everyone. At the end of the day, comedians reserve the right to say whatever they want, whether it lands or not. And if they truly cross a serious line into something illegal, that's when the proper authorities, not Twitter mobs or cancel crusaders, should step in. Until then, the best response is simple. If you don't like it, tune it out and move on. That's real freedom of choice.
Comedians are the ones testing where the line is. We can't always be perfect any more than Tom Brady will never throw an interception. Dave Chappelle lost distribution for his documentary, and Sarah Silverman was fired from a film over an old sketch where she wore blackface to make fun of racism. Roseanne lost the TV show she created with her name on it over tweets that were very offensive, but not at all clear Roseanne knew them to be. She is crazy, and I say that as a friend.
Sarah Silverman's story really struck me here. Her intention with that controversial blackface sketch wasn't to demean or mock black people, but rather to shine a harsh spotlight on racism itself and how deeply it scars both individuals and society. She was using satire, one of the oldest and sharpest tools in comedy, to make a point that was bigger than the joke itself. But as we've seen time and time again, the ever-sensitive woke crowd missed the nuance entirely. Instead of engaging with her message, they zeroed in on the imagery, chose outrage over context, and came after her with full force. The irony is that in trying to spark a conversation about racism, Silverman ended up becoming a target of the very cultural policing that silences meaningful dialogue. Her story shows just how unforgiving the woke mob can be, even toward those fighting for the same cause.
Pulled off stage, but comedian Nimesh Patel was literally pulled off stage during a performance at Columbia for a joke about how hard it is to be gay and black. Not an anti-gay joke, mind you, a pro-gay joke. But one of the event organizers walked on stage and said, "I don't think you're entitled to certain jokes you're making." Well, a sense of entitlement certainly is a big part of the problem here, but not on the part of the comedian.